Hello, hello.
Wake 'em up.
And let's give a shout out to Digital Hollywood, right? Is this a beautiful event? Is this something we ever expected 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago? No. It's a whole new world. And I'm so glad to be here. For me, it's like a dream. I mean, I got to tell you, this is extraordinary. And it's such an honor to be before you and have this wonderful panel here today to speak about what's really important in this world of the cannabis regulations and the cannabis laws. I want to say this. Well, this is generally our subject matter today. Is now that it's legal, what's really legal? Navigating the nuances of the cannabis industry. And I'll tell you something, folks. It is a complicated problem in which I'm proud to say I'm very much a part of trying to bring light on these issues, because I've been down for this cause for very many years. First of all, my name is Bruce Margolin, and I'd like to talk about myself, but we're going to not have too much of that. We want to give you some meat today from the people on this panel, because they got it, they know what they're talking about. I'm going to introduce them a little bit on my own, and then from there, they're going to take over and tell some more about their backstory, so you know the credibility of these people, so you can understand when they talk to you, they'll know what they're talking about. Again, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about myself, of course, everybody does, and I want to say that, first of all, I've been down for the cause since I began my criminal law practice in 1967. I started an organization that year to legalize marijuana, and I realized after going to court that I couldn't change the laws in the courtroom. And I'm proud to say I've defended more marijuana cases than any lawyer in the United States of America, and I'm very proud to say that. Thank you. Nevertheless, I started my practice and I saw that we couldn't change the laws in the courtroom. I said I had to get outside the courtroom to see if something could be changed in the political arena. And that's why I started an organization in 1967 called CAMP, which is the Campaign to Legalize Marijuana. Actually, the campaign to advocate the legalization of marijuana. And then I ran for public office over and over again. I ran in 1970, I ran for state assembly, I ran for U.S. Congress, I ran for governor on the marijuana legalization platform to try to legitimize this political view of how things should be in the future. I'm the director of NORML, an organization called the National Organization to Reform Marijuana Law since 1967. No, it's 1973, sorry. And I've been involved with almost every campaign we've had since then. Now today, as I indicated, we have some outstanding guests here to speak to you. And I'm going to start off with introducing one at a time. And I'm just going to give a little backstory and let them pick up the ball from there, because they deserve to talk about themselves, because each one of these people here today have the great qualities and backgrounds and experience in this practice, and they want to share that with you. First, I'm going to introduce Ariel Clark. She's an outstanding cannabis attorney. I know her well personally. I know her from her work. I've seen her do in the past. She's dedicated to the practice and the emerging cannabis industry since 2010. She made her practice all about this. She also serves in many capacities outside the courtroom. And first of all, she has offices in Los Angeles and offices in Sacramento and Santa Cruz. She's a founding member of the Los Angeles Cannabis Task Force, which is an organization that really was on the brink of this attempt to try to change things in Los Angeles, and she continues working there. She's also on the board of CalNORML, the National California NORML Board. I'm proud to say I nominated her to that. And so, Ariel, could you fill in the gaps of what I've talked about? You tell us a little more about yourself, please.
Okay, hi guys. Bruce, thank you so much. We are all very grateful for all the work that you've done in this industry.
Thank you.
And I'm sure everyone here today, you're here. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's really cool to be invited to an event that is a non-cannabis event and have people want to hear from our community. And I know everybody on this panel would say the same. I'm a cannabis business and corporate attorney and a founding partner of a female-owned and run law firm. We work kind of as general counsel to all types of cannabis businesses across the segments of the cannabis market in California. So we work with growers, dispensary operators, manufacturers, etc. And we help people with licensing and a variety of other issues that cannabis businesses face in a very complex time. The laws in California are very dynamic, to say the least, and certainly on a local level. So as part of the effort to try to help get things moving along in the city of LA, I founded and chair the Los Angeles Cannabis Task Force and do lots of other stuff. Basically, my life is revolved around this plant and helping this industry emerge responsibly.
Thank you very much. Let me introduce now, I'm proud to introduce Amanda Conley? You pronounce your last name, Amanda?
Oh, Conley?
Conley, right, of course, okay. Amanda Conley, she is a member of Brandon Branch, that's your law firm, correct? And she's also a founding treasurer of the National Cannabis Bar Association. She's an intellectual property and corporate and has a variety of companies focusing on technology, cannabis, co-founder of the Bay Area chapter of the Women's Grow, correct? So she's been down for the cause. She works inside of the industry and outside the industry as a political advocate, and we're proud of these kind of people in our world. Tell us more about yourself, could you please?
Sure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome so much.
Echo Ariel's comments. Hi, I'm Amanda Conley. I am, like Ariel, I have a two-women partner firm founded with my partner Shabnam Malik, and we focus on intellectual property for cannabis companies. So we work with companies that have a large brand portfolio that are looking to expand their brand into other states. The way of expanding brands nationally in this industry is obviously more complicated than in non-cannabis brands. So we help develop those relationships and put license agreements in place and sort of advise on all things intellectual property and public facing. And yeah, my partner and I founded the National Cannabis Bar Association a few years ago, and that was really an organization, it is really an organization designed to bring together business attorneys serving cannabis clients. In the past, the majority of attorneys working with cannabis companies were criminal defense attorneys because cannabis sales did not have a legal business component. It was a criminal defense issue. And so as we've seen this huge growth in this industry and a real need for good service providers, we formed this organization to bring together attorneys, and I'm happy to say that these two are members of it as well. So that's...
She's got the credentials, folks, right? Okay, Jocelyn Kane is here with us today. She's the executive director, or former executive director, of the San Francisco Entertainment Commission, which fits into this program very nicely. She's the legislative director of the Coachella Valley Cannabis Alliance Network, and much, much more. Tell us a little about yourself, Jocelyn.
Hi there. I'm Jocelyn Kane. I think, am I the only non-attorney up here?
No.
Oh, okay. We're bookending. I'm what you call a career bureaucrat. I worked for the city and county of San Francisco for over 20 years. I got to retire to Palm Springs, which doesn't suck at all. And now I am, and I helped the city of San Francisco before I left work towards legalization. And like other big cities, it's slow going in San Francisco. However, I relocated down south, and I want to take some time later in this panel to tell you how incredibly amazing the Coachella Valley is in terms of embracing cannabis. And I have lots of facts and figures, but we're growing millions and millions and millions of square feet of cannabis, and we're working really hard at bringing it to normalizing, as it were, the industry, and social spaces are a real thing down there, and soak and tokes and canna tourism are a real thing down there. So I'm going to cheerlead the shit out of you over the next 45 minutes. But yeah, I'm here to obviously talk about what we're doing down there as leading the rest of the state, hopefully, and you can bring back some great ideas to cities that you live in that maybe aren't embracing cannabis.
Thank you so much. Mitch Kulik?
Close enough.
Kulik. Kulik, that's what I thought. He is a security and corporate guy, okay? He has a wealth of experience of 25 years. Mitch has so many credentials. in working in the cannabis industry is more than I'd have time for in this program. But I'll give Mitch about 3 minutes because that's all he gets. But I know he can talk for 30 minutes about what he's done in his career. But give us a few highlights so they can know.
Yeah, I'll keep it. You heard about my morning session? I went on a little long.
No, I did, but I've been warned by my coach over here at the back, my buddy. He's my coach. That's my coach right there. He told me, keep it quick, because we want to give them some meat here.
I'll keep it quick. I'll keep it quick. So my name is Mitch Kulik. I'm a lawyer. I'm also a client of these two fine lawyers over on my left. I started off as a corporate lawyer. I worked at the SEC for a couple of years, Securities Exchange Commission. Then I was the general counsel of a hedge fund and private equity fund in New York City. And after 2012, when Washington and Colorado voted in favor of adult use, a light went off in my head that this was time to get involved with something that I always believed should be legalized.
You figured it out, right? You figured that out. Somehow you thought.
Anyway, I looked at the lab industry because I really thought that was a good place to start. And I joined the company Steep Hill Labs as their general counsel, and then also became sort of their fundraiser and investment banker, and discovered that that was a good role for me, and took that to private practice, represent companies now, help them form, help them get licenses, help them form partnerships with other companies, and
so they want to do a company, come to you, and you're going to put it together for them, right?
Exactly.
Business entities, that's your gig, right?
Business, and and
thank you. Well, you're going to share some of your knowledge with us in a minute, because I want to hear what you have to tell us that's helpful to this audience. Finally, and not least, but finally, Peter Goldstein. I'm proud to say that he's with us today. He's from a group called Regulated Solutions Group, compliant experimental marketing for cannabis, CBD, and hemp companies. Tell us what you do, Peter, specifically. What is your story?
I'm also one of the non-lawyers on the panel, and I guess I have the benefit of having partners who are lawyers, so I get to do the business side. And our firm is really kind of a marriage between compliance and marketing. There's a sister company that's been for the last decade servicing spirits, alcohol, tobacco industry with compliant events. We've been licensed in 40 states and done thousands of events all over the country, where the experience and the consumer engagement comes into one-on-one brand exposure. So we're bringing those practices over the last decade and working with some of the largest multinational corporations in the world into the cannabis sector. So we've had experience working with legislature and bringing laws and changes around in the legislative bills that would allow for events to have cannabis as well as alcohol and as well as tobacco. And working with brands, working with venues, and working with promoters to access that consumer engagement where we believe experiential marketing and cannabis and music all come together under one unique experience.
Now, we're going to save a few minutes after this, at least several minutes, to give you folks an opportunity to ask some questions from these extraordinary people at this seminar here. But now, last but certainly not from least, and always on time and always on game, is Kat Packer. I am so proud and to be able to introduce you to folks that may not know who she is, but she is a dog when it comes to this area of practice, okay, and what she's doing for our country and for our city. She's the executive director and central manager of the Department of Cannabis Regulation for here in Los Angeles. She has worked to ensure the successful and equitable implementation of the cannabis policy. She's working hard to try to make this licensing laws fair for everybody, because one of the things going on here is that we left out what's called the cottage industry. You have to have a gazillion dollars to get into this industry right now, I got to tell you. And I do a lot of that work myself now. I'm more from a criminal lawyer now. I'm a business lawyer as well in licensing, so I know that the average person can't even get near this industry without a lot of money. Anyway, let's go on with her. She's from Ohio, and I'm proud to say she's also a normal. What were you there? You were the vice president of the Normal chapter in Ohio.
Yes.
That's what's really a hot tip about her, and she is she also has a BA in political science and master's in public policy and management. She got a Juris Doctorate, and she's worked hard in this industry for some time, and now she's representing us in a very important aspect, as she is been so much there for everybody. You want a meeting with her, she'll have a meeting with you. You have an idea, she'll run with it. And she's doing such a great job for us and working so hard. She shows up everywhere on time and always has something great to say. So, Kat, I don't know a lot about your personal life. I just know you're on game. Could you tell us a little bit more about what you see right now? Tell the audience, where are we going with this industry? What do you think is going to happen in Los Angeles? What's going to happen with, when are you going to come out with the applications for cultivation, more dispensaries, and all the other things we got to get on game with? What's happening?
I like my buddy Bruce. He's awesome. Hello, it's wonderful to join folks here today. My name is Kat Packer. I'm the Executive Director of the Department of Cannabis Regulation for the City of Los Angeles. The City of Los Angeles has so much work to do, but so does the rest of the United States. Prohibition is more than 80 years old at the federal level, and what I have learned most of all through my work with cannabis policy is that cannabis and cannabis policy is impactful. You can't have a conversation about cannabis or cannabis policy without talking about health, without talking about law enforcement, without talking about the impacts that the plant and that the laws themselves have had on communities. And for some folks, they've had great experiences. Other folks have had very detrimental experiences with cannabis. But what we know is that, despite this prohibition, Americans like getting their hands on cannabis, folks like to consume cannabis, and that we need to change the way that we deal with cannabis and cannabis operators. Many folks might not know, because there are so many cannabis operators in the city, that prior to January 1, the City of Los Angeles actually expressly prohibited all cannabis activity. Prior to January 1st of this year, the City of Los Angeles expressly prohibited all cannabis activity. But what they did do is they gave limited immunity from prosecution to certain businesses. So for the City of Los Angeles to now be the largest city in the United States to license and regulate commercial cannabis activity, that in itself is a huge accomplishment. But that is the tip of the iceberg for the work that the City of Los Angeles, that the Department of Cannabis Regulation has to do. The joke right now is that we're a department of 5, and so when I show up, you're really getting the department. Everybody else is back at home base, holding down the fort. But it's an honor to be here with folks today, and hope to shed light on the conversation. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you. Now, what she's talking about is that the famous terminology pre-ICO. What happened is we had these businesses in Los Angeles, which were the dispensaries. Since they were in business in 2007, those 135 dispensaries got priority and got this, what she calls, it's like a temporary pass. Now, they have all been given the opportunity to get their licensing, and most of them have. How many dispensaries have current licenses? About 100 of them?
147.
147.
And we provide the list and a map to all of our authorized businesses online at cannabis.lacity.org.
Okay, now number 2, right now we're waiting for the applications to come out for cultivation. Is that correct? And when do we expect that to happen?
I get these questions all day, every day. People stop me in the hallway and on the elevator and want to know when the next phase of licensing is going to open. There are generally 3 phases of licensing within the City of Los Angeles. The first phase was for our existing medical marijuana dispensaries that had been in operation since 2007, that had been compliant with past cannabis policies. We've largely gone through that priority processing phase already. To date, we have 147 businesses that have temporary approval. Now, this temporary approval allows them to continue to operate while they are completing their full application. So essentially, our application process or our licensing process is a 3-step process. An application, an inspection, and a determination, either by the department, or the city also has a Cannabis Regulation Commission. There are 2 additional phases of licensing outside of the existing medical marijuana folks. The second phase is intended to be for their suppliers. The
cultivators, correct?
The cultivators. The city of LA had an issue where we, through our past cannabis policy, had always been aware of the retail operations, but Councilmember Koretz, and I like this term too, we've had a cannabis immaculate conception problem, where we knew about all of the retailers. It was like, where did this cannabis come from?
The valley.
Yeah, no one knows, right? And so now we're working backwards to try and provide authorization to the supply chain. So cultivators, manufacturers, people who are engaging in non-retail activity will be able to apply. Next, there are restrictions on who can apply through this phase. And then the third phase is open to the general public. But when we do open it up to the general public, we are giving priority in the processing of applications to social equity applicants. And take a second to note that the city of Los Angeles is one of 4 jurisdictions in the state of California, and to my understanding in the United States at this point, that has developed a licensing program intended to acknowledge and address some of the harms that community members had experienced due to the war on drugs. We know that people are getting ready to make millions and billions of dollars for the same reason why certain community members were behind bars for possession. That's unacceptable, and so part of what the city of Los Angeles, along with Sacramento, San Francisco, and Oakland have tried to do is to try and allow these community members to have access to economic opportunities, not only ownership opportunities, but employment opportunities as well, because moving forward, the very difference between engaging in a criminal activity and one that is authorized is going to be having a license to do that activity or working for someone who has a license. So those are our phases of licensing.
And we appreciate that equitable understanding that you have, and I respect and honor you for being so much on game for that. Thank you. Now, we could have a 2-hour discussion with our lovely guest here right now, and I'd like to cross-examine her for about 5 days because she has all the answers. But I can ask you one question. Is it true that we expect to have 400 dispensaries in Los Angeles? 400 licensing? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kat. I appreciate you being here very, very much.
Absolutely.
Can I ask you, young lady, what's going on with the licensing situation right now? What are you doing in your practice to get licensing for people in Los Angeles, et cetera? That's your game, right?
Yeah. So thank you so much, Kat, for all the work that you do. Before you walked into the room, we were really appreciating Bruce and all of the many decades that he's done the work he's done.
Thank you.
And I look again. I'm so impressed by what we're implementing in the city of LA, having been involved in all of this organizing work, advocacy work, and working with businesses that were growing the cannabis and manufacturing the cannabis, not from an immaculate conception, but through their blood, sweat, and tears, frankly. And advocating for this phase 2, that was one of the priorities of the Los Angeles Cannabis Task Force, was to say to the city council, wait a second, we need to have priority processing and licenses for people who are creating the products that are on the shelves of folks who are these Prop D shops. So, we have a lot of work to do. This is true. Thank goodness we are doing this together. We are all voices in this chorus, and the fact that, it's an emerging industry, and there are a lot of women also sitting up here, and there's opportunity for women in this industry and social equity and much care about veterans and health, and touches so many things, so many communities. There really is an opportunity to create a new type of industry and in a way, work together with folks who are helping to and really spearheading the regulation of this industry. So it's very cool. So what am I telling my clients? Well, clients need to be locally permitted in order to get a state license. So in the city of LA, it's identifying how do you get that local permit and sort of where do you fit in the cannabis business market and in which phase of processing. Bruce, as you mentioned, it's incredibly expensive to get on the regulated market. We represent a lot of cannabis legacy operators. Some of our clients are 2nd and 3rd generation growers. And the sole focus of our practice is working with folks in the cannabis industry, and we also work with people who are wholly new to the cannabis industry. And it's a really challenging matrix of laws and politics to sort of weave through, because not only is cannabis still illegal federally, and then you have these shifting state rules, and then you've got 540 local jurisdictions. It's sort of like you're playing a game, which is a very terrible, pithy analogy. It's a very serious game. But the rules of engagement are shifting. And that's through no fault of anyone's own. It's because we are creating the rules now. You're seeing people who are involved in that process. All of us are. So a lot of what I tell my clients is you have to work very hard every day. You need to read everything, surround yourself with incredibly educated professionals, get involved yourself in understanding what's going on legally, politically. You can't tune out of this process whatsoever. And then breathe a lot. Breathe a lot.
You have to educate
Breathe a
yourself.
lot.
You have to educate. You have to educate yourselves, because every city and county has the opportunity to decide whether or not they're going to allow licensing, everything from seed to sale. Most of the cities and counties have now banned almost everything. Got it? I don't know how much basic law you people know, but understand under the new Prop 64, you can have an ounce of weed, you can give it away. By the way, think about me when you're doing that. Number two is you can give it away, you can travel with it, you can possess it, you can buy it. All that's legal. You can grow 6 plants in your home, and only if you have a residence that allows it, your own home. Unless you live in an apartment building or a condo and they allow it. So that's one of the problems I'm having about this issue about on-site consumption, Kat. I think I came down and spoke to you and the president about this, that we need on-site consumption licenses. Otherwise, unless you own a home, you got no way to toke and smoke, because it's illegal to smoke in public for openers. Now, so understand what was just told by Ariel. You have to be on your game to read all the different aspects of these different cities and counties licensing provisions, and you have to look at the maps to see where they allow the zoning for the licensing. So what she does, Ariel does, and I do, and other people like myself, we try to turn you on to the maps so you can see where they're going to allow the zoning, where you can get a license, where they're going to be, where it's going to be allowed, in which area, etc. Now, the other folks here have a lot of backstory on their careers, and maybe this young lady in front of me can tell us a little more about what you're doing out in that area that you spoke about, growing a lot of weed. How are you doing that? Do you have a license for that, sucker, or what? Are you doing?
How am I doing?
Are you in a gray area? What's the story on there? Or greenish? What you doing? You told me you grow a lot of weed. You told me you're growing a lot of weed, right?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Well, I don't grow a lot of weed, but I'm doing legislative work for the Coachella Valley Cannabis Alliance Network, which is just sort of what it sounds like. It's a trade association for the businesses, the legal, regulated businesses in the Coachella Valley. So we're a small organization, but we're growing all the time, and we're adding new members. But yes, there's a lot of...
What's the licensing like in Coachella Valley?
Yeah, so the licensing is like, you said, complicated, but...
you do have licenses allowing them, but they're allowed.
Yeah, so here's the deal. There's 7 million square feet of grow facilities in the Coachella Valley, either planned or permitted, right, and being built. That's a lot of growing. There's 162 dispensaries. There are basically like 5 out of the 9 cities in the Coachella Valley have some kind of regulation scheme, including the land use, the zoning, and the regulatory licensing schemes for almost the entire seed to sale. In fact, Desert Hot Springs was one of the earliest cities in the state to have a licensing scheme and permit cannabis activity. Palm Springs, again, has a license for social use in its downtown. So we can have
on-site consumption you're talking about,
yes, we can smoke and use cannabis in a bunch of ways in a social space, not in your home.
Only 7 dispensaries in Palm Springs, is that correct? How many dispensaries? 7.
There's about 7.
Yeah.
But there's a population in Palm Springs of 48,000 people, right? That's not very many, but there's 1.5 million visitors every year, and hopefully all of you have been there once or twice and keep coming back. So there's a lot of people that want to consume cannabis in the Coachella Valley. Riverside County is not still allowing, so we've got a big black market still to deal with. But I will say that as opposed to LA, and I know you're busting your ass to get this to work, the motivation primarily in the Coachella Valley is taxation. And the cities in the Coachella Valley all want that tax money.
It's about the
And
money.
they're-
It's about the money, honey, right?
It's all about the money.
But that's what's
They
right.
want the jobs and they want the money, and they recognize that that value is there, and it's really important as a driver for the politics of this issue, right, of this space. And so we rely heavily on the fact that these guys believe their cities will do better every year, and they can fund schools and police and all the public safety services with this money, and this industry is happy to provide that. However, we are working to reduce some of those taxes because they're somewhat unbearable, and we know the price of flowers dropping dramatically. So we're dealing with some of that, but as an organization, we're working to get the other 4 cities to embrace cannabis in some capacity. Yeah, that's a long
Thank you.
answer. You're welcome.
Beautiful. Now, before I ask the next guest to say something about her practice, Amanda, please. But before I ask that question, you know, I write a guide on marijuana laws. I do it every year for the last 20 years. I give it out. It's on my website and all that. One issue I have is whether or not local regulations, like, for example, cities and counties that have banned, for instance, cultivation, some that allow X amount. What about patients' rights? Prop 64 says that it didn't interfere with Prop 215, which is the Compassionate Use Act. However, my concern is that you're going to go to a court and they're going to say, oh, no, they're not complying with local regulations. They can't have 20 plants. They can't have a reasonable amount for their use. They're stuck with the 6 plants in residence. What is your opinion about that? Please tell me. What are you thinking, Kat? What do you think about that, Ariel? Does the local regulations in any way overturn the rights of patients to be able to defend themselves in state courts by saying that they didn't comply with the local regulations? What do you think? What do you think, Ariel?
So I often have to toe this line between sharing what I think and what is the policy of the city of Los Angeles.
Okay. So what's the policy in Los Angeles
And they're
City?
not always in line, but I think that that's important to share. These policies aren't mine. I represent the city of Los Angeles. So, and particularly what you're referring to is a state law question. Should or do states or do local jurisdictions have the ability to further restrict the language of Prop 215? And as someone who is a disclaimer, before I joined the city, I worked for a national nonprofit organization, the Drug Policy Alliance. The Drug Policy Alliance and Drug Policy Action campaigned in support of Proposition 64. So full transparency, I worked on the legalization campaign for Prop 64. What that means is that, you know, some other regulators will say, well, you know, I'm just the messenger. I didn't have anything to do with legalization.
Okay,
That's not necessarily the case with me. The intention behind Prop 64 was not to touch Prop
Was
not to touch Prop 215.
That's the idea, but
Correct.
I'm wondering about the degree that's true.
And for the city of Los Angeles, there are multiple ways that folks can engage in commercial cannabis activity and not be subject to enforcement. And I think that generally that's what folks want to be able to do, is to be able to understand what the ramifications are for engaging in commercial cannabis activity. Under Prop 215, folks had the ability to make recommendations above the 6 plant limit that Proposition 64 put in place, and so I think that legal opinion would be that that still remains untouched. Now, I do know that there is an intention to phase out the collective model.
But we know it's over
at
with.
the state level.
Senate Bill 420 is dead at the January 9th, 2019, correct?
Correct.
That's it. So that was a collective thing we had under Senate Bill 420 up until now, where you had collectives and co-ops in which the dispensaries were born out of that. That's why we have dispensaries. That was a situation where patients could provide to patients for no profit. Now the problem with that no profit was undefined. No one knew exactly what that meant, about what profit meant. Instead, it was a question for the jury. So that kind of phased out. And my God, I have all these cases that came down from the Court of Appeals driving people nuts about what the law was. So now what we have under Prop 64 is non-patients, anybody can be in the cannabis business, provide to people that are not patients, and provide to we don't like to call it recreation, I like to call it spiritual use, but that's beside the point, other than recreational adult use. So that's what we have going on right now. Let me ask you something, Amanda. You are a founder and participating in Women's Grow. Now, we just had a couple of panels here, which my daughter Madison was the host in that case, and I'm very proud of her. She was here a few hours ago. The Women in Grow. What's going on with that whole organization, the chapter of Women Grow? Are you still working with them, or what's happening with them? Women Grow.
What's happening with Women Grow?
Yeah, are you having meetings? Are you having women come together to talk about being in the industry, or what?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I co-founded the Bay Area chapter. I live up in Oakland of Women Grow. I'm not actually involved anymore, but I'm happy to talk about that generally and just the importance of women's initiatives, diversity issues generally in this industry. So Women Grow was founded initially to bring together women entrepreneurs in the space. It's a bit of a misnomer. It's not referring just to cultivators. It's referring to, women entrepreneurs and the people who support them. And so, yeah, it was great. We launched about, 3 years ago now, and there really wasn't in the Bay Area at that time a good networking opportunity for folks getting into the industry. And so, sort of you build it and they will come. And it got very big very quickly, and it was really exciting. And probably the events were attended by about 30% men, which is wonderful. We're happy to have the men supporting the women in their success in the cannabis industry. But yeah, it's a really
great.
So
we have any meetings in Los Angeles? Are you doing any Los Angeles?
So they have chapters all over the country. I do not know the latest on what they're doing, but if you go to, I guess, womengrow.com, I want to say, you can find a list of the events. And yeah, if there's one happening near you, it's an excellent opportunity. I know we've seen other groups come up too. Some people were talking earlier today about some women in cannabis initiatives, and it's wonderful. This industry is kind of coming of age or gaining more legitimacy at a time when there is a recognition of the importance of, promoting women, promoting people of color, dealing with the reparations from the drug war, things like that. And so it's really exciting to see the cannabis industry embrace this. I think we have a real good opportunity here, and we are doing it right in most places. So,
Peter, do you have a lot of women coming to you for your services? What's the story on that? Would you say that much more men than women are involved with the cannabis?
We're very open-minded, and we're very eclectic in our approach. We have a small team. We outsource the majority of our work to employees and logistics companies at the events. And I would say, actually, quite honestly, that there is more women that are brand ambassadors at our events than there are men. So in the way that we approach our marketing is really to have experiences that are fully compliant. We have a license as an event promoter's license, temporary now.
What kind of license you have? What was that?
It's the event promoter's license.
Okay.
Which we've applied for our permanent license, our annual license. And we will have probably a good mix of employees, both in-house and out in the field marketing and representing brands and promoters and venues.
Isn't there a special license in the state of California for having those kind of events? What's happening with that?
It's the only state that has such a license.
Pardon me?
It's the only state in the union that has that type of license.
California.
California,
right.
Yes.
So what's the status? Anybody got one of those licenses yet in the state of California? They have those events where they could smoke and joke at midnight toke? What's happening?
Well, it's a complicated landscape right now.
It's complicated, right?
It's happening.
This is what's going on. No one can give you the answers here, okay? It's a mystery, this practice of law right now, and it's developing, and there's no experts really because it's a shifting sand. I mean, you walk right here, you're dead. Next time they change the law. It's been a mess. Tell us.
Well, part of it is I separate in events that are cannabis-based versus events that want to have cannabis, and they're two very different lanes. So what's been now, it has already happened for the first time in history, are events that are cannabis-focused, and those have now occurred. So that's really
they're in trouble, right? They're in trouble right now, right? Did they close down a High Times event out there?
Right, you're talking about consumption events.
Whatever was out in San
consumption
Bernardino?
and sale. I mean, obviously, it's very, very complicated, and there are a lot of issues inside of each one of these scenarios. If you have consumption events, that's one thing. If you're having events where product is sold, and then each individual sales and the components of that being regulated and fully compliant, everything from where they come in with the product, how they manage that, through the logistics, through the cash handling, through the reporting. So there's a lot of issues there.
Definitely, it's complicated.
The good news is it's happening, and it will continue to evolve.
and the legislative approaches of shifting that, again, I think how they were currently written and the intention are very, very different. So we're part of working through all that. What's been proven in spirits and tobacco is the ability to have those brands have consumer engagements where there is consumption and it is done safely and it is done compliant. The same thing will eventually occur in the event space with cannabis.
Now, Mitch, I appreciate you being here today. Could you tell us a little bit about what you actually do with this sophisticated practice, securities and corporate security, you know, all that stuff? What's the bottom line? Put it in plain language for people like me, all right?
Yeah,
plain, simple language, all right? What do you do, and why do you do it?
What kind of report did you get about my morning speech? I'm so curious. I was told I did all right. Well, you know, before I get there, I want to say a couple of things that you guys might not know in California. So I come from New York, and I go back and forth every other week. So this is happening in the East Coast, right? Just to make sure everybody understands that. I know it started out here, but so when I go back in a couple of weeks, you know, Massachusetts will have adult use. That's a pretty big moment in the industry. But also, Kat, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but you know, New Jersey is spending a lot of time focusing on a social equity program. So I'm really not answering your question at all, but I want to address this other stuff because I think
he's being non-responsive to the question, Your Honor. This isn't right. What's the answer? What do you do?
So anyway, I do think this industry really is an important industry. It's such a new industry to get it right in terms of hiring women, promoting minorities, and most of these states are actually, many of them are getting it right, but because even in the application for these licenses, they want to see real thought that goes. You should see some of these applications. This is a very complicated industry.
Takes hundreds of hours, right?
Some of the applications are 1,800-page submissions, 2,200. In New York, people rented vans to drive them to Albany to deliver banker boxes with applications. But you have to have your hiring plan and your diversity plan and your community plan. This is all of the legislation. And Kat, yes, you do deserve a lot of appreciation for your role in bringing that to Los Angeles. It's really it's a great thing. And unfortunately, there's other states that actually have gone the other way. I'm not sure if you're familiar, like Michigan, they're saying if you have that social equity that might give you a priority in one of those 4 cities in California, it precludes you from getting a license. So, I mean, most these states are trying to get it right, and cities are trying to get it right, but it doesn't always happen.
It's ongoing moving. Now, you better, when you make those applications out, folks, you better put in something about hiring people in places that Kat Parker's talking about. She wants to see that this is more widespread amongst people that get an opportunity to be in this business. So it's very important to consider that. Now, listen, we had a lot of talking up here, and I don't want to waste too much of your time without getting down to the nitty-gritty of what you want to hear. So let's have some questions right now, which I'm sure will cause a lot of continued conversation. Who has a question for us? I got a lot of hands going up. Well, go ahead. How about you in front, ma'am? What's the options in advertising she wants to know about? Of course, we do have rules about advertising under the Prop 64. It's very defined under Prop 64, where you can advertise, whether you can use billboards, who it can appeal to. Who else can, shall we say, enlighten this lady about her question? Anybody have anything to put in there?
I can.
Go ahead. Okay. Let's hear it.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, so the regulations, I think someone mentioned this earlier, but only allow you to place advertisement in a stream that will be seen by 71.6% adults or something like that. So you have to get good data on the publications that you're promoting the brand in. As a practical matter, you know, the social media platforms all reserve the right to shut down cannabis pages. You know, it's in their terms. They don't always enforce their terms consistently. Big surprise. Clients often ask us, you know, do I have some kind of right? I can sue Facebook for taking my stuff. No, unfortunately, they're a private company. They don't really owe you anything. They're basically complying with their terms. So you have to be creative about advertising it, less because it's prohibited in the regs than just as a practical matter. It can be difficult on these platforms. But you're not otherwise sort of unduly restricted. In Canada, They have extreme restrictions on advertising. You can't have an ad that evokes an emotion in someone, which is like an ad. So it's really interesting. What we're seeing is a lot of Canadian companies are acquiring U.S. brands because they can be advertised here, and then they can take that brand goodwill and value back up to Canada. So we're restricted, but it could be worse.
One example is you can have billboards in California, but only on non-state roads, for example. On local roads, you can have billboards, correct? Is that right? Do you know? Billboards. You're allowed to have billboards if they're not on state highways.
They're not supposed to be advertising cannabis billboards on a highway that is an
Not
instrumentality.
on the highway, state highway, but locally you
If it's
can.
local, potentially. I sort of think we're going to see the billboards start to go away.
There's billboards all over I-10, by the way.
Right, and important to note that we have ordinances and laws that are on the books right now, and there will be future amendments that are made. And one of the amendments and ordinances that are coming down the pipeline in the city of Los Angeles is a cannabis advertising and signage ordinance, which would further restrict where off-site signage could take place, and also restrict the type of on-site signage that businesses could have as well. And just so folks know what the city of Los Angeles priorities are, and assuming this is the state of California's priority as well, youth prevention. So folks who are getting involved in this, that's the litmus test. We don't want folks, young minors or folks who aren't supposed to be getting their hands on cannabis, enticed to consume cannabis, and we want strong prevention messages as well.
And I think that's something to really think about. We have clients come to us and their packaging or their advertising, it has a child-friendly feel to it sometimes. They're not intending, obviously, to market to children, but if you're using animal imagery, if you're using cartoon characters, if it's sort of fun, that someone... So if you're using the camel, you have other issues too. There are just certain types of products and marketing that are appealing to children.
I just got the word, we're out of time. It doesn't mean that afterwards you can't buttonhole these people and talk to them out in the hallway, and don't hesitate to ask them questions, because they love to talk, I'm sure, and they'll be willing to talk to you about what they're doing. And I want to thank you all for being here. And I want to thank the participants for joining us. And I want to thank Digital Hollywood. Thank you very much. It's been a beautiful, beautiful venue and a beautiful event.